but we're talking about left unity, and just a couple of things to mention. The Palestinian issue is really showing the possibilities of what could be accomplished with a sort of broader left coalition. And we're literally seeing it. So there's no need to say, well, what's possible? We're seeing it. The mass protests, those are radicals, those are progressives, those are non-establishments, those are liberals, those are libertarians. So it's a broad coalition. It's a tactical I forget the full name, but tactical strategy. The tactical strategy, which was a number one in that example. We're seeing the possibilities. You're seeing the worldwide protests. You're seeing a consistent protest, and you're seeing it seems to be energized protests every time there's a protest. It seems that the energy does not seem to be dying down, and you're seeing it based on probably the most dire situation that the left more broadly will be put in. What other situation outside of maybe like the imminent use of a nuclear weapon, maybe? I can't imagine anything else. So it is good to see that at least in this situation, now it's a terrible, this is why it takes such a terrible situation to bring us together, but in this situation, we do come together to show support in the ways that we've shown support, even with our criticism, because there's some of us in non-established and radicals feels like the progressives and liberals just finally got here, or got here maybe a couple of months ago. They weren't here October 8th. They weren't here on October 8th. Some people feel that way. So yeah, but anyway, I've jawed enough. Let's get to some of this, the unification part, which doesn't really go that well in an interview. Let's watch.
For the record right now, I would be more than happy to bury the hatchet going forward. I think, and this is what I wanted to ask you about, I'm happy to keep going if you have time, but if not, we can end it here. But going forward, as we're trying to reconstitute the left in 2024 and get behind a candidate in the general election, what are we going to do? Because there are a number of candidates that are fracturing left attention right now. And I don't want this to be a situation where we have a fragmented left that disempowers our ability, especially with Gaza happening, disempowers our ability to put real pressure on the Democratic Party to.
I'm going to rewind it. For me, and this is just a disagreement with Bree. To me, we feel, because I can say we, because I know Nick has said this, we have to get out of feeling like the need for a necessity to have a candidate. People need a candidate that we all need to get around singularly. If we all decided, and we thought we were doing that with Cornel West, or not all of us, but a good majority of us, because some of the progressives weren't coming along, to unite that we like a candidate, and so we all go there. I thought Cornel West could have been that candidate. But as long as you're registering your vote outside of the duopoly, so whether it's Claudia or Cornel, I mean, Cornel, if you still like Cornel, some people do, and let's accept that. Even Marianne Williamson, not even Marianne Williamson, she's a Democrat. I'm talking about those outside of the Democratic Party. So I guess RFK right now would be considered outside of the Democratic Party. I haven't heard him say libertarian. To me, libertarian is not outside of the Republican Party. To me, they take court. It's sort of too similar. The party, now there's libertarian values and libertarian ideas that I would agree with, but as far as the party, no. But you get the point being made. So what just getting out of the idea that we have to have a candidate that we all unify around. I don't believe that registering your vote outside of the party is what the Democrats will feel if that's your goal. I don't even think that should be a goal. That would only be a goal if you're still saying I'm coming back. You're trying to you're hitting this bully and you're going, oh, let's see if it reacts. When you just walk away from the bully and let's not deal with the bully. The Democrats are the bully. And it feels like you're going, hitting them, like with the uncommitted vote, hitting them, you're going, let's see if they react. What's the use in that from our perspective? So let's continue. I'll rewind it back so she can say the question again from the start.
Minimum wage? What is wrong with you? I don't mean you. I mean generically.
Oh, shoot. Did I go back too far? Okay, I did. Right here. All right, so this is from the beginning.
For the record right now, I would be more than happy to bury the hatchet going forward. I think, and this is what I wanted to ask you about, I'm happy to keep going if you have time, but if not, we can end it here. But going forward, as we're trying to reconstitute the left in 2024 and get behind a candidate in the general election, what are we going to do? Because there are a number of candidates that are fracturing left attention right now. And I don't want this to be a situation where we have a fragmented left that disempowers our ability, especially with Gaza happening, disempowers our ability to put real pressure on the Democratic Party to stop a genocide.
Yeah. So, look, definitely is my answer. Now, let me give you the context. So, at TYT, I have platformed literally hundreds of progressives, both candidates and hosts. We've started, half of the hosts that exist now in the progressive ecosystem at some point were at.
Yeah, you're speaking of the Bernie Industrial Complex. A lot of the people part of the Bernie Industrial Complex got their start, or you helped them get their start. The Bernie Industrial Complex. You are largely the recruiter, the molder, the person who puts on the training camp, or put on, past tense, the training camp for most of the Bernie Sanders industrial complex that's still out there. Or maybe he said have.
TYT and Young Turks. So, and I kept going, and I'm still going to this day. We have dozens of hosts. Even though I know for a fact that a whole bunch of them will at some point turn on us and say outrageous and toxic and totally false things about us.
Now he's referring to how people say that they have moved to the right. So he's in, like, I go on my gut and I go on my lived experience and reading people, and I can see in his face a tell when he's on certain things where it looks like he's pretending and or lying, and or it could be the same thing, like where because he's lying, he's pretending and he's trying to give into. He'll go like, yeah, I try so hard, like it's so empty, but he's still going through the motions. And it's a lot of this in this interview when he's professing so much to be left and radical, and he's still professing to be that. It's such an indication that the critiques of TYT moving to the right has landed on him. It's such a indication of that.
But I still keep going, and I still keep reaching out, and I'm on this show, and I went on, and I had you on our show, and I keep reaching out and reaching out and reaching out, and then every once in a while,
I instigated that, Cenk. I reached out to you.
You're saying, hey, wait a minute. I asked you to be on a podcast, and so your hundreds of progressives that you have platformed and helped and launched into the world don't count because you didn't go on the podcast in exactly the right way that I wanted.
No, it's quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. I think that the reason that I try to stay out of the personal stuff is because I think that what you do is enormously valuable. I think that what Sam Cedar does is enormously valuable. Those are huge platforms with smart people who share my politics, 99%, who are advancing my politics. And I would prefer not to say or do anything that diminishes their ability to do good work. Quite the opposite of what you're saying, in fact.
Well, look, I would last two things that I got to go and do the Young Turks. Look, Brianna, in my opinion, when a friend and an ally is attacked in a vicious and false way, and people can see this on tape, I get their back. This
You see how unserious the Bernie industrial complex media arm, you see how unserious they are about really solving issues, really really forming a coalition to solve issues. You have to meet their checklists. So you can have a checklist of, okay, the reason we're forming a coalition is because we agree on these things. But then you have a checklist that say, oh, this and this. So if I'm where I hear him going is because of a person, a single person, there can't be a unification, reunification, coalition building, whatever you want to use to call it, because of a person. You see how unserious the people who have been in this space for 5+ years are? So they're holding hostage, if we were to believe them, they're holding hostage the unification of all their audiences that can really cause damage to the establishment because they have personal vendettas. The other thing is, we're not playing civility politics here, Cenk. If you're in a coalition for A, B, and C, but you disagree on D, C, and E, we're still going to talk about D, E, and C, of the other letters. I forget the letters, but the other letters. Cenk thinks a coalition means you're going to be quiet on the things you disagree about. How absurd is that? That's what you guys do with the teaming up of the Democrats. You swallow, before this genocide, you swallow your tongue about Palestine. Stop being single issue voters. That's what you said. So is this even serious? And just think about all of the people from AOC to Bernie Sanders. How many people they have following them? They can have protests pop up in minutes. Almost anywhere in the 50 states. They can have people pop up in minutes. Hey, everybody, let's meet over here, downtown Los Angeles. Genocide Joe is showing up. Everybody kind of converge. Why aren't you guys doing that? I'm just saying, if you're really trying to affect change, wouldn't you try to affect change by mobilizing your audience? That's what RBN tries to do. Get involved in mutual aid. Donate to our mutual aid if you can't physically get involved yourself. Get out and get active. We have chapters for people to join to get active in their communities. Why aren't the larger platforms doing that with larger audiences? It's not. That's not my role in this. It's not. So the rich person who has the rich revolutionary who has all the money, it's not your place to fund the fucking revolution, motherfucker. When you got all the money. It's not my. What? Why wouldn't it be your job when you have some of the largest audiences? How do you exclude yourself from a job where you have some of the largest audiences? How do you say by just that's not my role? What? So, but that's what's done.
This whole blogs and things that got me smeared by the mainstream media started when I backed Sam Cedar when the alt-right attacked him on some nonsense joke he did, pretending that he was a groomer, etc. You see me defending progressives all the time when they are attacked, because I've been through it 100 times. When someone doesn't not so attack, and
so he gave an example of the establishment attacking a person, so-called Sam Cedar. That's the example. He compares that example to a podcaster or a person having a person-to-person attack, a personal attack. That's equivalent to him.
And he did it. I forget if he did it to Sirota first or Ryan Grimm first or whoever he did it. I was like, oh my God. And I went and rushed in for help. When you don't come and help, and when you say, I'm indifferent to it, I don't really care what he calls you. I'm going to call it whatever it is. Okay. I'm asking you going forward, can you just pause for us? And not you, just you, but the whole movement. Can we all just pause for a second and go, wait, is it right for one of our own to attack someone in the movement with no basis in fact, in a way that is so maniacal that of course they're going to have, like, are we supposed?
So Cenk Uygur doesn't only want Bree on Bad Faith to push back. Let me put up the graphic. Cenk Uygur wants all of us, when he is attacked, to push back. Is this Donald Trump or is this Cenk Uygur? Who is this? So, do dissidents, you see there in the upper left. Then you see Jimmy Dore. You see Nick and CJ behind him. You see Fiorella. Some other people who I just couldn't fit on the graphic that I would put on that side with us. Of course, Heartlands Media. Of course, the rest of RBN members, Sabby, Rome, JB. Of course, the real Nico House. But he wants all of us on the left of this graphic and the people on the right to come to his defense when he is personally being attacked. On our own streams, we supposed to go, hold on, guy. You're not going to say, you can talk bad about Genocide Joe, but you're not going to say nothing about Cenk Uygur, okay? That's what he wants us to do. Is this serious? That is so funny. That is so funny. But anyway, let's listen to some more.
Supposed to go, are we supposed to be dogs and go, oh yes sir, of course we are backed by CIA, sir, of course, but we will work with you nonetheless, sir? I mean, that is the most unbelievable ask. And so I'm asking you to think about it. If it was you, I mean, look, I had you on a podcast.
He's saying because he has been criticized as being CIA approved, CIA adjacent because the money he took. He's saying that's a bridge too far. That is a bridge too far. Well, I mean, I would say it's a bridge too far to say that he should be part of a coalition. And I think that was sort of Nick's response in the chat we were talking about. It was like, Cenk Uygur is a fucking imperialist. I think that's what Nick said. But anyway, let's listen. This is hilarious.
Yes, and you caught feelings that I didn't go on your podcast. That is so tiny compared to what we were called.
No,
and I don't say it as like a
that's not
like,
the point.
No, Brianna, I'm not saying it to say ha to you. I'm saying it.
He's saying what happened to me is way bigger than what happens to anybody else. If you bring on Madeleine Albright and treat her like she's some sort of thing that women should look up to, the lady who said it was necessary or she thought it was worth it to kill 500,000 Iraqi kids. What critique are we supposed to say about that? What are we supposed to say? I would have picked somebody else to come on. That's too bad. That's unfortunate. And this is one of the issues why there can't be sort of a broader coalition, because politicians get in the way. Because these other issues, and I was kind of just throw them out right here, Ukraine and NATO. Didn't they just, with the Ukraine war, spun the name NATO left from RBN, spun that name, and that's who they are. They're backers of NATO. So that, of course, prevents a broader coalition. And it's also hindering the NATO part, not the Ukraine part, but the NATO part is hindering, because I see NATO and the United States empire as the same thing. So NATO / the United States empire is involved in the genocide. And then you have John Fetterman is another great example. You had the Vanguard boys and some other people on the left, on this right side. You see Crystal and Kyle at the top right. It was Crystal, I think Emma and Sam Cedar, various people pushing John Fetterman. And we were against that. And Nick caught that shit from the beginning. So there's a lot of, the police state is another thing. Funding Israel. Like, we're like, yeah, we unite against the stopping the genocide, but that's really where it stops, because you're fine. A lot of the progressives are fine because they vote for it, funding Israel with conditions. Like, what does that do, really? You know what I'm saying? What does that do? You can't use our money once it's in their bank account. Couldn't they just, you know what I mean? Just mix it up. Just take their hands and rub the money together. Now we don't know which dollar came from which person. I don't get that. Getting the money stops them. What is putting on conditions do, really? They just say they're doing it.
Because I'm trying to evoke some degree of empathy from you guys. Do you not see that if somebody goes like...
He wants us to feel bad for him. He's trying to invoke some sort of empathy from us to feel bad that he was called a CIA operative or whatever he was called, that he's so upset about. Nobody told you to take $20 million from Wall Street, but he wants us to feel his pain and express it.
You sense like 2% of it and you were worried about it. Imagine if you got the whole thing, because some lunatic starts saying that you're secretly being paid by Nancy Pelosi, and then everybody goes, yeah, well, work with that. Brianna, it's your fault. Work with that person. Work with that person. It's your fault. You're starting to split the movement. You'd be like, what are you guys talking about?
Oh, man, does he have friends? Do other humans who aren't in contract with him, do they associate with Cenk? I can't imagine that he's a pleasant person.
That's crazy. Why isn't anybody helping?
Maybe he is. I'm saying I can't imagine it.
Me? Why are they supporting this lunatic instead? But I can't get you to see that. And I don't think I'm ever going to get you to see that.
Well, yeah, and it's not an important point. It's not an important point.
So I'm done with it.
I don't want to go tit for tat, and I can sit here and pull up all the old tweets of the mean-spirited, very personal. I spent most of February in my studio apartment sobbing by myself. I didn't have a network. I didn't have TYT. Ryan Grimm was one of my closest friends and allies in this situation. He gave me my first job. I see him as a mentor, and I felt like I couldn't even talk to him about it because things got so toxic.
Ryan Grimm as a mentor. The same Ryan Grimm that's part of the NSEP, which is likely a intelligence cutout. The same Ryan Grimm who came on her show with Shama Sawant and was so outrageous. Shama Sawant said, "What the actual fuck are you talking about?" Because he was saying such outrageous shit about the railroad strike and the railroaders in the union, because he is a tool of the establishment.
Like I can't appeal to you with my humanity. So I don't want to frankly go back there. It was one of the darkest times of my life, to be honest. I was so fucking depressed.
Is the people surrounding him enabling him when he puts out ridiculous conspiracy theories, like calling me someone who's being funded by NATO because I interviewed Madeleine Albright once.
They get more charged up about these personal attacks than anything else. This is the thing that really animates them the most. It's such a professional managerial class thing to elevate these personal things above ideology, above tactics, strategy.
So, direct question to both Katie Halper and Brianna Joy Gray. Do you guys think that I'm paid by NATO? And if you don't, why don't you say something? Do you think that Sam?
Because it's none of her fucking business. That's why. So apparently TYT wants everybody to play Captain Save a TYT. Apparently, let me tell you something I'm never going to be. And that is Captain Save a TYT. That's what they want. That's what Cenk said in the interview or was alluding to, and that's what she's saying here too. TYT wants all of us to be Captain Save a TYT.
Sam Cedar is just a corporate shill? And if you don't think he is, then why don't you say so?
If you do think he is, then you keep quiet. So maybe she thinks he is, and that's why she's keeping quiet.
I just think that this effort has been so destructive, so toxic, and so disgusting. And don't tell me not to focus on Jimmy Dore.
So this was in the context of forced to vote. This is why they didn't participate. Now, for people who don't have health care, do you think if some other person who's fighting on the side of trying to get health care, if another person in the fight say, hey, you're a piece of shit, do you think that person who doesn't have health care will go, you know what? Well, I'm not for the fight for health care. You think that person's going to do that? Or do you think the person with the luxury of health care can go, I'm mad, so now I'm not going to join this fight for health care?
When they've decided to put Jimmy Dore front and center in this entire thing.
Go back and look at what I look like on the videos of January of 2021. I look not great. And so suffice it to say is I could sit here and tell you all of the deeply hurtful comments that people in your orbit have made, but I truly have no interest.
So this is now, remember I said she never explicitly says who is the left that she's talking about when she says, can the left finally unite? It is clear to me because there's clear to me they're talking about forced to vote where this was a fight between progressives, non-Democrat progressives and Democrat progressives. What they view as Jimmy Dore aligned progressives. That's what they would view them as, Anna and Cenk. Jimmy Dore aligned progressives, who he would call fake progressives. He called Brianna a fake progressive too. So that's what we're talking about here. They're not including non-establishment and they're not including radicals when they're talking about this. They're talking about uniting the people who are fighting during forced to vote, which was largely like a progressive fight. Now, that doesn't mean that radicals and non-establishment people weren't part of the Medicare for All movement. That's not what that means.
Interest in asking you to apologize for Nomiki Konst or Anna Kasparian or any of them. I don't care. They are responsible for their actions. You're responsible for yours. And frankly, I'm willing to bury the hatchet on it all. But you seem to have a different requirement of me.
Brianna,
you want me. Let me tell you this, Cenk. I have no interest in throwing Jimmy Dore under the bus or casting aspersions or one way or the other. But I want to make clear, I have talked on the phone with him, I think, once, maybe twice in my entire life. And it was around organizing the Medicare for All rally that was held in January of 2021 in Washington, D.C., talking through logistics of how to put that together. I have had no other relationship with him other than what you see in public on Twitter. I've maybe DM'd him a couple of times. Hey, did you see this clip? What do you go? You know, those kinds of things, including back during the campaign when, frankly, he got really mad at me at some point about something. I can't even remember what.
Of course, he always
but this
gets
idea
really mad at
that
everybody for over everything.
But the idea, but who cares? People have feelings and people get sentiment. Like, we're different. I appreciate that. But Cenk, you were just screaming at me at the Hill like a month ago, and I decided to brush it off. I don't care. Like, you called me a bunch of names on the Hill. We'll splice that in too. But I'm just trying to encourage you to maybe have a little bit of a duck water roll off kind of attitude to some of this and stop requiring that everybody kind of fight your battles or we'd all be mad at each other. Half of my audience wants me to hate David Sirota. I don't want to. I like David Sirota, and I think he is intelligent and valuable.
And I'm gonna go ahead and run a victory lap here, because I absolutely believe that RBN is the reason half her audience wants her to ditch David Sirota, the establishment shield David Sirota. So before RBN, that guy was the pie in the sky. Before RBN, before one of the more successful working class Black radical channels who actually have influence with activists, influence with people on the ground, influence with people who are most active in politics, who want to be most active in politics. Let's continue.
People in this space. Same with Ryan Grimm. And it's okay.
Yeah, and same thing with Ryan Grimm. And another victory lap for that one. Now, Jimmy Dore, I think they were used to be friends. I can't remember. I don't know how far back it went, but I remember since one of the first times I've seen someone critique Ryan Grimm was on a Jimmy Dore show. I don't know how far back that was, or if there was a time that he was friendly with the Ryan Grimm. And I must say, having this belief that you can be chummy, you can be in community with people who are sellouts to workers like Ryan Grimm, it's really not surprising how the professional managerial class really don't know how to organize with working class people. Working class people are more people who are like, no, we don't want fucking sellouts. Professional management class people are more of, well, as long as they have the accolades, people make mistakes. The accolades, in other words, sort of take precedence over whether or not you're a sellout or not. This is a impediment that the professional managerial class has with organizing and being in community with true working class non-professionals, because they can get along with nurses who go to school. They're working class. They can get along with those people. I'm talking about non-professional working class. They can get along with Starbucks workers. Those are the people who are in college without degrees yet. Same reason. I'm talking about the people who dig ditches. I'm talking about, the people that work at Del Taco, the people that work at, I don't know if that's national, McDonald's, that's national. I'm talking about, the people that do some of the most grueling underpaid work that's non-union. Let's continue.
It's okay. They can wish I had a different attitude to them. I can wish they had a different attitude to them, but they can still like me and I can still like them. And that's okay, right? Why can't that be okay?
So A, definitely. B, look, if you think Davis, like, I'm not saying you, obviously, you just said you're good with
Listen to this.
If you think
Of
David
course.
Sirota, so I will tell people in your audience.
Now, Bree says these two people, my audience believes this about them and I don't, so there's a disagreement, but you can have your belief. Cenk says, no. If you think these two establishment shields and Ryan Grimm and David Sirota are bad, this is what he says about us. Listen to this nonsense.
Your audience, so they can get mad at me all over again. If you think David Sirota and Ryan Grimm are not intelligent people that are very, very helpful to the progressive movement, you have no earthly idea what you're talking about.
Well,
Those are the
they don't
two
doubt their
best
intelligence.
reporters that we have. They're the two most honest, smartest, strongest people we have. So
They
that's
don't doubt their intelligence, Cenk. What they criticize, because people are allowed to make narrow criticisms of folks that have also positive attributes. What they criticize is to the extent that they, in their reporting, perhaps is too credulous of the incentives of squad members and gives them too much benefit of the doubt, and in effect, constructively, whether or not it's their intent, runs cover.
It is their intent. It's absolutely Ryan Grimm's intent, and that's proved by his book. How can that not be in his intent when you see he comes out with the book about the squad?
cover for the squad as they do things like, we agree on, fail to use their leverage at any point during that small margin 2021, 2022 term to advance the values and goals of the left. Right? Can't that
no.
be?
Why would Cenk have any? Why wouldn't Cenk? You know, David Soroy and Ryan Grimm is Cenk Uygur to Cenk. It's the same person. So what he's saying to cover them is he's really talking about himself, because it's the same critique. So he's not gonna land anywhere but where he's landing on this topic.
That be a thing?
But again, that's super unfair to them, because they did exactly the right thing. They thought it was the wrong tactic to use in the beginning, and then when it came time to use the tactic, they were 100% right, and they did put that pressure on. So
look, I talked to Ryan about it. I talked to Ryan about it on this show, and he conceded. And people can hear his own words for themselves. I don't mean to mischaracterize him. You can go back and listen to that episode from the summer of 2021. But he conceded some pretty important points about the strategic considerations that were being made at the time and the arguments that he was making at the time, some of which were not accurate. Okay. I'll leave it at that.
If you are...
You mean telling lies again? But that person is supposed to be right alongside us in this community. That is bizarre. That is bizarre. You mean he lied about forced to vote and he knew that was untrue? He lied about what could happen if you forced to vote on a speaker? You mean that? But that's your mentor.
You're so hopelessly radicalized that you think Sirota, Grimm, and me are sellouts. Then no one will ever be any...
You see how he included himself there? And I hadn't looked this far. You see, it is exactly what I said. He views them this when he's speaking and talking about this, he's really talking about himself. So his advocacy and the word choice is really to describe his situation. And he just included himself here. If you think we're sellouts, who said that about you? Why are you including yourself, Cenk?
So they don't doubt their intelligence, Cenk. What they criticize, because people are allowed to make narrow criticisms of folks that have also positive attributes. What they criticize is
super unfair to them, because they did exactly the right thing. They thought it was the wrong tactic to use in the beginning, and then when it came time to use the tactic, they were 100% right, and they did put that pressure on. So I
talked to Ryan about it. I talked to Ryan about it on this show, and he conceded. And people can hear his own words for themselves. I don't mean to mischaracterize him. You can go back and listen to that episode from the summer of 2021. But he conceded some pretty important points about the strategic considerations that were being made at the time and the arguments that he was making at the time, some of which were not accurate. Okay. I'll leave it at that.
If you are so hopelessly radicalized that you think Sirota, Grimm, and me are sellouts, then no one will ever be anywhere near pure enough for you. And I don't mean you, Brianna, again. I mean,
but you're just bringing up language that is not really in this, but that's okay.
All right.
That's okay.
So look, in terms of the future, guys, I will work with anyone that has good faith.
Look at all these caveats he has here. That has good faith.
And is headed in the right direction.
So where you're going has to be approved by him and good faith. The good faith is so he can exclude Jimmy Dore. That's where that good faith part is. He's putting that in there to exclude Jimmy Dore and is headed in the right direction, meaning you can't be allied with Jimmy Dore. That's the wrong direction. You can't be allied with things that Jimmy Dore is okay with, like being against Ukraine war. That's the wrong direction. You see how but this is how the professional managerial class thinks coalition building works. You go, if you believe this, get out. If you believe this, get out. If you believe this, get out. That's how they believe coalition building works. Coalition building works the way you see it all over the world right now in protests. Are you against a genocide in Gaza? Yes. Show your ass up. You see the only requirement? Which one gets the most people? The one where we're seeing hundreds of thousands of people protest every single week because it's one requirement, or Jenks, completely unserious. The professional managerial class left, the Bernie Sanders industrial complex, they're completely, their influence should be revoked. You should be watching their shows for entertainment, not at all for information gathering.
And I don't expect anything. I've been through everything in the world. I've had mainstream media, as we said in the beginning, smear me beyond recognition. I've had now some portions of the left smear me beyond recognition. I've had the right wing smear me beyond recognition. When I've asked for people to rally, sometimes they have in beautiful ways, like when we started Just Democrats, and other times they haven't, for personal reasons or non-personal reasons, or because they heard something. That's okay. Bygones be bygones. I don't work with toxic people. Outside of that, everybody's fair game. Brianna, you're not toxic. I get it. We can't get past that one tactical disagreement and all of the massive mountain of feelings that was created by it. But I'm officially right now, and honestly, you're the only one who ever brings it up. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. So I'm saying, like, I never bring it up in other interviews. Other folks don't bring it up. It's long past history, okay? And
that's why I should have been the face that forced the vote, Cenk.
Well, by the way,
that's why you should have been calling me the face that forced the vote.
No, but if you were the face of it, it would have made a big difference. It would have been,
because Jimmy Dore talked about it, and he's more popular, and so him talking about it popularized it more, and him going hard at the strategy. Like, what does that do? Like, that doesn't. You guys chose to pick a person and say he's the face of this because you were unserious about organizing. Cenk Uygur is the most delusional person on earth. Is coalition building possible? Radicals, progressives, social democrats, liberals? Yes, it's possible on single issue coalitions. So like Palestine, example, but a broad coalition is absolutely not. And it's because of all the contradictions that progressives, liberals have, being anti-war, but being part of a coalition of Democrats who are pro-NATO, for example, supporting Democrats in general. The police state is another one. So let's bring up some of the differences here, which I would say military, NATO, CIA talking points. I would say these are some of the broader policy differences we have with some factions of the left. This will sum it up. This is Nick and I going over something Cenk said, because remember when Cenk said if you're against the Ukraine war, you're an anti-genocide grifter. Remember he called the people on the left that? Nick and I covered it. So let's watch this video, Me Without a Beard, remember?
Given the size of the massive violation of international law in this case, if they cross the border and actually try to take the country, obviously you freeze all Russian assets all across the world. I don't care who it is, every oligarch, anything related to Putin, seize. Now, again, there'll be some idiots not idiots, to be fair, they're grifters. And I don't know who they're working for, some portion of them, but they'll pretend that people pretending to be on the left, okay? And maybe a couple of people who actually are on the left and are, don't understand world politics at all, who are like, oh my God, freezing the assets of oligarchs. That's so warlike. Him taking Ukraine with 175,000 troops is not warlike, but freezing their assets is? Are you insane? Right? So, and what about the people of Ukraine? Do they count? Are they human beings? As a progressive, do you care about them? Do you care about their freedom? Do you care about their rights? Right? So now once you get beyond freezing the assets, that's when it gets impossible.
Right.
Because what are you gonna do, start a war with Russia?
He's saying that if you're anti-war, you're a grifter. You're a grifter if you're anti-war. So this video is this is one of the most insane videos I've seen from Cenk Uygur. Because you see how he was simping for.
So when Cenk calls people grifters for being anti-war, does that fall in the same category as what he says Jimmy Dore did to him? Does that fall in the same category as this is so egregious? Of course I can't be in community with you. How is that not the same thing? But Cenk can do it.
You're a grifter if you're anti-war. So This video is a fucking. This is one of the most insane videos I've seen from Cenk Uygur. Because you see how he was simping for neo-Nazis? He was simping for neo-Nazis. What about Ukrainian people? Oh, you mean the ones that we arm neo-Nazis to hijack the country and overthrow the country like we have done? You mean that country? Yeah, but I literally every single thing he said in that video was wrong. And he was like, "Oh, if we don't let this happen, China will take Taiwan." Taiwan's part of China. This motherfucker is the dumbest person I have ever seen. I cannot
Nick,
believe.
do you think he's doing it on purpose, or you think he's just not informed? That's what I can't tell from him.
And I can't wait to talk to Caleb about this, but he's 100% a pro-war asset. Because he was like, remember, he repeating the talking point from the Biden administration. I just shared with you how people are not buying this hysteria. But look at what he leaves the video. He leaves the video with if Russia invades. If Russia, he's repeating. He repeating Anthony Blinken, State Department talking point.
Yeah, yeah, it's a bit shocking. The beard. I look a lot younger without the beard.
Given the size of the massive violation of international.
Okay, so all right, so you see some of the differences why we can't have a broader coalition. Because progressive and social democracy is really just anti-war when it comes to past wars, not anything that's current. They're never for against a current sort of war. I thought it would also be funny for me to play some of the old sort of jank videos with Breonna Joy in previous interviews.
Guys,
Here's one.
Do I look like I don't want to force votes? Of course I do.
One of the moments that I remember of TYT being characterized as no longer capturing the spirit of the Justice Democrats or what the Justice Democrats were supposed to do was the moment around Force the Vote. And at that time, despite there being a poll that TYT put out of its audience, where a majority of the TYT audience seemed to support Force the Vote, the newscasters, the personalities on the show, were very much against it. And as I'm sure you can remember, that caused a significant rift. The issue was not whether or not Nancy Pelosi would necessarily become speaker. Cenk,
Sure
with all
we
due
are.
respect, your
Fantasy
characterization of what happened, I think, is reflective of the lack of grace and communication that was happening among the left at the time. And I think if people had been less motivated by the personal animosities against each other, it seemed that Jimmy Dore, you've expressed some animosity toward him several times during our short conversation here. I do think if those personal animosities weren't at play, maybe we could have been in a world where you were listening to myself, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski, Cornel West, Chris Hedges, who were also advocating for this and who were being very clear that there were any number of demands. I wrote an article in Current Affairs that set all of this out contemporaneously. So you can go back and look. That it wasn't this idea that we were going to hold the vote and magically get Medicare for all. Cenk, you're talking about personalities. I'm talking about issues. All I know is that David Sirota supported Force the Vote. I had him on my podcast talking about it many times.
That's not
yes,
true.
He did.
No,
and he
didn't.
continues to be an advocate that I value and respect a great deal. And he is able, as a mature person, to tease away his personal feelings about human beings that he might share an idea with or a strategy with, and the underlying strategy. And I really do hope that we see more of that on the left and less of a focus on who it is that's delivering a certain kind of a message. Thank you so much for joining us today and talking through some of these tough issues.
You got knocked the fuck out.
Here's another one. Another different conversation they had.
Just to be really clear, because I didn't insert myself into an argument that you and Jimmy were having.
You kept backing him over and over again.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I keep backing Force the Vote. I believe in Force the Vote. And I'm going to continue to back that kind of adversarial politics until the day I die, whether Jimmy supports it, whether someone else supports it that you might not like, whether someone I respect deeply like Cornel West supports it, and Chris Hedges supports it, and Crystal Ball supports it. All of these people were supporting this idea. And what was frustrating to me was how unable people were to engage with it on its substance, in part because they were so caught up in the ad hominems with Jimmy. So again, I can't speak to any of the stuff that you just talked about. I don't know who's funded by who. That's none of my business. I choose to judge people about the content of their opinions on the policies that I care about. So with respect to force the vote, I was frustrated with some of the backlash against David Sirota. I was also frustrated with David Sirota coming out of the gate a little timid on the issue, but I reached out to David Sirota. I talked to David Sirota on my show and his, and we worked it through, and I addressed all of the concerns he had about force the vote. And he ended up being one of the best advocates for force the vote and engaging, because we engaged and we were able to add to the idea and say, you know what, the part about the Medicare for all is a largely performative vote to get the issue discussed in the context of this pandemic. But what concrete asks could we make? And David Sirota was instrumental in coming up with some of those asks, like getting Richie Neal off of the head of the Ways and Means Committee, like getting the PAYGO exemptions, which although there's a lot of discussion about how the squad did get those, that wasn't in fact the case. And he enriched the idea because he was able to participate in the conversation.
Yeah, that was very informative.